Cy-Hawk back home where it belongs in Iowa City. Welcome to Hawkeyes Live for a 110th edition right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you all stopping by. You know the drill. You are ultimately the producers of the show. Leave the comments and questions there in the chat. We got Elliot Clough here from Rivals, from Iowa Rivals. Elliot, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Mark?
I am doing just fine. Appreciate you being here. Never fear, everyone else. Corey Brad is standing by. He's in transit, but he has promised to join us here soon. So we will get Corey's perspective as we typically do. Elliot, so things got a little interesting there in the back half of the fourth quarter after a 17-3 lead. And when the Hawkeyes have a 17-3 lead, when they have a 17-3 lead, especially against an inept offense, then usually you would mark that down as, okay, we're good to go. Let's get out of here. But things did get a little tenuous there late.
Yeah, I think you really have to put it on the shoulders of the offense. Shocker. Like you almost always do with Iowa. The second half for the offense has not been good in these first two games. And how they figure that out, well, I asked Kirk Ferentz about it today, and he said, I don't know. So we'll see how that continues. A few of the players said, well, we just need to keep going and execute the way we have in the first half. And well, if it was that simple, they would have done it by now. So maybe it's about mental focus. Maybe it's about Brian Ferentz and his ability to script the first few drives and then, well, not necessarily go off that scripted playbook. So I think it does fall at the feet of the offense. Obviously, the defense has led up to late touchdowns. They did against Utah State as well, where that game was out of hand at that point. But you can't let these teams hang around, because if teams like Iowa State and Utah State are hanging around and getting pretty close towards the end of the game, what's it going to be like when you play Penn State in a couple weeks?
And also, I don't know that anyone would admit to this, but just knowing how these games go at Iowa, even the ones that culminate with a win, just a mindset or an approach to a certain extent that, again, they may not want to admit to. It may not even be conscious that we've got a lead. We sit on leads. We don't extend leads. We don't drive the dagger. We just kind of let off and coast and rely on the defense to take us home.
That, and if that's your mindset and the run game is currently where it's at, it's not going to be effective, because if that's going to be your mindset, the run game has to be consistent. The offensive line has to dominate up front, and they're just not doing that. Of course, Patterson kind of had his breakout game in this last one, the 59-yard run, of which obviously he didn't score, and then they ended that drive with a field goal. And then he punched one in from 4 yards out later. Kaleb Johnson had a couple good runs. It's a step in the right direction. I want to give them credit where credit's due, but the run game has to improve drastically if that's going to be their approach to games. If they're going to put the gas on in the first quarter and the second quarter and then just gradually wean off and lean on the defense, your run game has to be better so you can run more clock.
I don't want to overreact to Patterson's success. Limited number of carries. Kaleb Johnson has been the guy since the start of last season, but Patterson was having more success, and Kaleb Johnson did struggle in game one as well at just over 3 yards per carry. So based on watching, possibly rewatching, is there something there that maybe Patterson's got something Kaleb Johnson does, whether that's vision or otherwise, or just those running plays worked?
I think it's a combination of the running plays worked. They hammered the counter big time in that game because it was working. Secondarily, one thing that I talked to my cohort Adam Jacoby about during the game is that Patterson hits the hole. He sees the hole, he hits the hole. Kaleb Johnson, I don't know whether it's he's caught up in his head. I don't know if he has any, and this is just speculation, like a nagging injury or something like that we just don't know about. But Jazz Patterson is see hole, hit hole. And in the Iowa offense, in Brian Ferentz's offense, that's kind of what you got to do. It's really not any more complicated than that. And I feel like Kaleb Johnson is making it a little more complicated than he needs to. He's seen as this big back. He got that Powerade NIL deal, of course, and was one of the best freshman running backs in the country last year, and did a lot behind a really bad offensive line. Now, I don't know if he still thinks he has to do it all himself, if he's just thinking about it too much and trying to get shifty behind the offensive line and playing, I don't know, quote unquote, cute football, as opposed to making it simple like Jazz Patterson is. But that's why I see it transpiring that way, is that Jazz Patterson has made it simple. It's simple, but not easy. See hole, hit hole. And Jazz Patterson is a downhill runner, and I think that's to his advantage, especially in this game.
Yeah, it was very obvious that he just, there were no cuts, there were nothing, and it just was north and south immediately. And I don't know if that just made him look more explosive just because he was so determined and so decided once he got the handoff that that's where I'm going. But it looked like just a burst every time through the seam for 5, 6.
Yep. And I've been I haven't exactly verbalized it to anybody but myself, but I've been thinking about Kaleb Johnson as such for a little bit now, especially in these last 2 games. And I don't want to hammer on Johnson too much, more so praise for Jazz Patterson. But and we've seen flashes of this from Jazz Patterson throughout his short-lived Iowa career to this point. To see it come to fruition on Saturday was honestly kind of gratifying for folks like myself in the Iowa media who have seen these flashes and said, hey, keep your eye on Jazz Patterson. And now it comes to a head, and he has that 59-yard run and punches it in for his first score of his career.
We've got Elliot Clough here for Hawkeyes edition number 110. Yes, Corey's coming. Never fear, folks, because Corey has never missed a show, so we can't have that. So Corey is traveling. He will join us as soon as possible, but we've got Elliot here from Iowa Rivals. Best place to find you, Elliot, and your work.
For sure. Find me on Twitter at Elliot Clough, ELIOTCLOUGH. And of course, you can always head to iowa.rivals.com. We got a bunch of great free content up right now about the Noah Shannon appeal, as well as the Jamari Harris news that he is back. And then some recruiting info as well for our premium subscribers. If you're new, if you want to get that premium content, you can head to iowa.rivals.com/subscribe. Got a ton, especially of recruiting info that most people aren't privy to. So a lot of great stuff there.
You bring up the Shannon decision by the NCAA. Was there any clarification as to the reasoning behind the decision?
There wasn't. Kirk said that he was made aware of the decision, but wasn't told why. And I think reading between the lines, it's just the NCAA. And again, he didn't confirm this, but reading into it and making it pretty simple is that the NCAA needed to make an example of somebody. And Noah Shannon was a good enough player, and a player that only had his 1 year of eligibility left, that they could say, hey, we got him. And they didn't think about it any more than that. And he didn't bet on his own team. We're not sure what sport he bet on, but he did bet on Iowa. And so I think the decision is a little, I want to find the right word. I think they only took 3 weeks to even consider the appeal, first of all. Whether they even considered it more than it may have been a 2-minute meeting for all we know.
Exactly. Whether they truly considered it, they may have just sat on it for that long. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think they just decided to make an example of Noah Shannon, and that's that. Truthfully, I think it's that simple. It's classic NCAA in that regard, where, I mean, even looking at, I think its name is, to go on a bit of a tangent here, Tez Walker, the situation with the wide receiver from North Carolina. That was much more of a black and white decision to me, an easy decision to grant him that eligibility. Whereas, of course, Noah Shannon knew these rules, he broke them. But to give him that full year suspension, I think is unfair.
Ironically, as we speak, it's being uploaded right now on our national main channel, folks. You can check out our discussion about Tez Walker with our North Carolina guy. So that's being uploaded right now. And North Carolina's got a date with Minnesota coming up this Saturday. 6 Big Ten teams are playing 6 ACC teams. I've been watching football for a long time, and I know Iowa's not involved, but for 2 conferences to get together that many times in 1 week is kind of odd.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You wouldn't think of something like that unless it was, designed on purpose, the Big Ten ACC challenge. But
Yes.
yeah,
I'm all for it, but
oh yeah, make non-conference a little fun, instead of playing Western Michigan and Utah State every week. Obviously the Iowa State game is always fun for everybody here in Iowa, but definitely enjoy mixing it up a little bit. Of course, like the LSU Florida State game, all over that in week 1. I was all over it. Well, until like late in the third quarter, but I was all over it for the first
we
half.
need more of that. We need more of that. So, Elliot, any other takeaways from this game that you think are meaningful for down the road?
The first 2 that come to mind we've already talked about. That's the run game and the offense as a whole. I think the defense, we've gotten, obviously 2 games isn't the biggest sample size in the world, but we've gotten a glimpse of what they are. I don't think they're last year's defense. If you throw in Noah Shannon in there, that adds a little bit of a dynamic of that run stopper that I wouldn't say they don't have. Maybe they will have that level of run stopper with YA Black and Aaron Graves in there later on in the season. But that one tech spot, like that's what you're there for, to plug holes. And I think we'll see more of that. Only 1 sack over 2 games to this point. Obviously, that's by design. If you watch the Iowa State game, they were getting the ball out quick, short passes. And he did get popped. Rocco Beck got popped a few times by Joe Evans. So the opportunities are there, but I think it largely falls in the hands of scheme and the awareness of the quarterback. And that's the way Utah State operated too. Of course, Deontay Craig got his sack there, and they are a spread it out, go type of offense as well. So I think that number will increase. It's low for right now, but I think that's just a byproduct of who they've played to this point.
And I believe Joe Evans deflected the pass that ended the last threat by Iowa State. I believe that was a swing pass out to the side, and Evans deflected.
That might have been on that drive. I think
on
it was Ethan
okay.
Herkett who had that final tackle.
Okay.
It's him.
All right. Talking Hawkeyes with all of you. Appreciate you being here every Tuesday at 4:30 Central Time. I tweeted right after the game, Hawkeyes 2-0, Brian Ferentz -6. So he's 6 points down right now. Now they should be able to make up some ground, considerable ground, to get them ready for Big Ten play here this week. Maybe they put up, 40?
That's
they need to. They should.
Right. Well, the last time they played Western Michigan, I believe it was PJ Fleck's first year in Kalamazoo, and I think they beat them 59-3. And overall, Iowa is 1-2 against Western Michigan, but this is a team that they should throttle. Whether or not they will, we'll see. This is a coach in his first year. This is a group of 5 team that hasn't had a whole lot of success. So I think that Iowa should, emphasis on should, beat them very, very handily. Whether or not that does happen, that's remained to be seen. And truthfully, I need to do more research on Western Michigan to this point. We're going to have a pod on that here coming up here soon. But well, here's one thing to tell you is in looking for a guest to preview that game, I don't believe they have a beat writer on their football, covering that football team. So that might be a little telling as to how good they are, because they've been good in the past. Of course, that's how PJ Fleck got the job at Minnesota, but that might be telling of what kind of team Iowa's facing this weekend.
They either won 0 or 1 his first year. I think he tells that story about them. They were 1 in whatever his first year, 1 in 11 it must have been. And then, they're walking off the field undefeated his last season before they lost to Wisconsin in the Cotton Bowl. But just thinking about Western Michigan playing in a Cotton Bowl is just pretty remarkable. So I guess that is what gets you a Power 5 job in the Big Ten. 5-7 last year for Western Michigan. And games of note, they lost to Pitt 34-13. They lost to Michigan State 35-13. Their 2 Power 5 games last year, lost to Michigan the year before 47-14. So, yep, pretty typical MAC team. I always get the directional schools in the MAC from Michigan mixed up. These are the Broncos, of course, from Western Michigan.
Right. One thing we did talk about today briefly with Joe Evans, I think he hit on it and moved on pretty quick, is that Iowa's actually, the history of this series is Iowa's down 1-2. They were upset by Western Michigan early on in the 2000s, I think. And then, of course, Iowa crushed them the last time they faced one another. But, of course, they're riding this high of winning against Iowa State. And we were, the presser after the game was literally like presser wall, Iowa's locker room. They were celebrating. I'll tell you that. They were happy after that game. But they have a 24-hour rule. I'm sure you've heard this before. 24 hours to celebrate, and then you move on. And once Joe brought up that 1-2 record, it was like laser focused when he was talking about that. So, I think if they do approach the game as Joe Evans appears to be, and they do so for 4 quarters, it could be a similar blowout to last time where they won 59-3. And I really think this first year coach thing is something to take into consideration because you're trying to figure out so many different things and establish culture, and it's not just install playbook, go. That is not what it's like to take over a college football team, no matter what level you're at. So they've got a lot of things need to go right for Western Michigan to really compete in this one. And I'm looking at their remainder of the schedule, and I think you put it up from a comment. So they lost to 48-7 against Syracuse and beat St. Francis, PA. It's the St. Francis Red Flash. They beat them 35-17. So for all you St. Francis fans out there, sorry to bring it up too soon.
Yes,
I don't.
They're still grieving that loss. They are. But Western Michigan goes down to Syracuse by 41, so we can always make that comparison. And Syracuse plays Purdue actually this week, and we got Corey Brada showing up from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Corey,
do I look like myself, Mark?
You are very much. You are the brand. I've always thought that, and now it's been confirmed. You are the brand. Yes.
Anybody that didn't pick this up from the beginning of the show, this is a sign that Mark is slowly replacing me with Elliot. So he's just kind of working me out.
Yes, this was my decision. Sure.
Yeah, this is kind of a corporate-led decision. So anyways, have you guys mentioned Utah State and what they did to Idaho State over the weekend? I know you probably don't care, but no, don't give me that grimace, Mark. Let's actually talk about this because, listen, it's a fair topic, and I'll tell you why. They put up 78 on the mighty Idaho States of the world. Now, you may say, well, who cares? That's a crappy FCS program. Well, Idaho State actually competed really hard with San Diego State week 1, lost by like 1 score. So take that, Mark.
Okay, I'm taking it.
Hey, I'm just saying 78. I think people were underestimating Utah State a little bit. They were able to run a little bit on the Iowa D, and Don Patterson said it on the postgame show. It's probably an improved team. They're probably not another 6-6 football team, and I think they're probably going to do pretty well in the Mountain West. We'll see. They got a tough game this week. Who do they play Friday night?
They are playing Boise State.
Boise? No.
Air Force.
Air Force. That's going to be a game. That's going to be,
and you're going to be locked in on that one because you want to continue that comparison the entire season.
And it's Friday.
Keep that up.
It's Friday, Mark. Of course, I'm going to be locked in on it. Yes. As will you. That's CBS Sports Network.
I will. I try to keep track of everything, but it seems as though you want to maintain this comparison with Utah State, so you'll be tracking that one.
This is my agenda for the rest of the year. So, but yeah, I'm excited to see what talk about a tough prep on a short prep. You're trying to take a short week to prepare for Air Force.
Yes,
that's a challenge.
True.
So it'll be interesting to see how. Obviously they're well coached with Blake Anderson, but anyways, I'm sorry I missed the first 20 minutes of this show. Has Elliot talked about how Iowa fans want Bama now? They're 2-0 and they want Bama.
No, I have not.
Okay.
We were saving that for the rest of the show.
Oh, okay. Yeah, bring on Bama. I'll be the first.
Bama's
to say
down, so they would be the one just to go after.
Bring on Texas, Mark.
There you go.
But yeah, you probably. I talked for. It's amazing, Mark. I can't believe that I did this, but I talked for 3 hours during post-game coverage on Saturday, and then talked for 2 more hours, over 2 hours with Don, with Coach Patterson on Sunday. So like 5 hours of Cy-Hawk post-game coverage over the weekend, but we can talk more about it if you want.
You have squeezed this one dry, but still I have one question to ask you because of Jazz Patterson and his, I don't want to overplay it, his emergence. It's not like he ran for 175 yards, but he looked good. And there is a comparison to be made, and Elliot and I were talking about it, between Jazz Patterson, his running style, and whether it's more effective for this offense than what we've gotten out of Kaleb Johnson through 2 games. Did you see a difference there, or just better blocked plays, better executed plays up front that allowed him to gain more yardage?
No, I think that Elliot's estimation of that is 100% on. And keep in mind that fans are probably tired of hearing me say this because, and I've kind of just been a ventriloquist, if you will, for Don Patterson. He's used the term glider to describe Kaleb Johnson. And, it's one of those things, like we get hyped over certain aspects of athletes. Like we look at a guy like Kaleb Johnson, he's 6'1", 6'2", 225, and it's like, man, this guy's going to be a beast. He's a poor man's Derrick Henry. I don't know that I jumped on the hype train like that, but I think you see a guy like that and you're thinking, wow, sky's the limit. Some guys don't have it, and I'm not saying he doesn't have it, but I'm also not saying he's Derrick Henry. And I think the way he runs, he's not Derrick Henry. He is a glider. I don't think he hits the holes with authority. I think Jazz runs a lot harder than Kaleb Johnson does. And as far as top-end speed, I'm sure Kaleb has got better top-end speed. He's got a long stride. But the problem is, even with that size at 6'1", 6'2", how many plays on Saturday, Elliot? I talked after the game against Utah State. Hey, the run game looks better because they had less negative plays. Man, I'm sitting there in the stands on Saturday and I'm watching, -4, -5, -6 on run plays. That's just obscene. When you have a 6'2", 225-pound running back and you're losing 6 yards on a simple handoff, that tells me you're having severe breakdowns up front. Now, I will say Jazz Patterson's style, they had less negative runs with Jazz. Now, he also ran the ball less. I don't know if that'll continue moving forward. I will say this. As much as I like Kaleb Johnson out of high school, and I don't know if I sent you this, Mark. I think I sent it to Coach Patterson. But I cut a video on this channel when I first tried to build this channel 2 years ago. I cut a video about Jazz's commitment, and I went back and just watched kind of what my initial thoughts were to his commitment. I was higher on Jazz Patterson out of high school than I was on Kaleb Johnson. Despite Kaleb's speed, let's not forget Jazz Patterson had offers from like Alabama. He had huge offers on the table. So he was at one time a 4-star recruit. Deerfield Beach High School had a bunch of coaching. They had weird coaching issues his senior year. It kind of took away from his numbers. He ended up getting dropped by a lot of, I don't know if, Elliot might be able to tell us what Rivals has got him at or what they had him at. But a lot of these services have dropped him to a 3-star. But at one time he was a 4-star. And frankly, I remember, and again, you can go back and watch that video when he committed. When I watched him on tape, I'm like, man, this dude looks like Sean Green looked like at high school. Because Sean Green was not, I wouldn't what Sean Green at Iowa, 215, 220. And at the NFL level, he was probably closer to 225, 230. And, Jazz Patterson was 190 coming out of high school. That's kind of what Sean Green, we go back and look at Sean Green's high school numbers. He was about the same size. Now, I don't know if Jazz can pack on that much weight or if it's good for him to pack on that much weight. They're obviously different backs, but there's something about, and Kirk Ferentz talked about it today during his weekly presser, Jazz has that ability to invite contact and run hard regardless of the situation. He's fearless. And I'm not saying Kaleb Johnson, you hate to, unfortunately, given the fact that they came in the same class, they play the same position, you're going to compare the two. But Jazz just seems to welcome contact, and he hits the hole hard. He's not fearful of collision. He welcomes collision. I think the only guy on that football field on Saturday that was going to stop him on that 59-yard run was TJ Tampa. I mean, what a play by TJ. That dude, I mean, just that one. I went back and watched that. Did you watch that playback, Elliot?
Yeah, I did. Yep.
That was an insane get. TJ Tampa jumps over a teammate and somehow runs Jazz down like it's nothing. Like TJ Tampa, I don't know what he's going to run at the combine, but that dude, based on speed alone, I would think is going to be a pretty significant draft pick when he comes out. So anyways, I like Jazz. The running game looked better. I mean, they ran for 130 yards, I think 121 after you account the one sack. So they went up against a better defense in a tougher place to play, and ran for more yards, averaged more per carry. And it's a step in the right direction. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. But they did run for over 100 yards against a very tricky 3-3-5 Cyclone front.
To address Jazz's recruitment before we get out of that, Rivals had him at 5.73 star, so fringe 4. And he did have offers, like you mentioned, from Alabama, Michigan, let's see here, Oregon, Penn State, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Utah.
That's a gauntlet of offers. Yeah. I mean, I think people started to kind of forget about him because again, I go back to Kaleb Johnson's size. He's a guy Iowa hasn't had. And let's not forget, a couple of years ago when those guys committed, who was the talk of the Big Ten at that position? It was Braylon Allen, converted safety at Wisconsin. And he's this big, again, Derrick Henry-like dude. There's all these Leonard Fournette, these big dudes that were kind of changing how we view that position. And I just think we kind of maybe overlooked him as Kaleb came in and got some time his freshman year. But I just remember Kirk Ferentz last year. I know you weren't covering Iowa last year, Elliot, but Kirk talked about Jazz right there with Kaleb all of last year. And Kaleb maybe was a little bit more physically ready to go. But you also had, 3 backs in front of him. And now, Jazz has shown his willingness to pass block. That clip of him taking out those 2 Iowa State defenders on the blitz, that was an impressive play. But I mean, he was doing that every time he got in there and third down. I mean, he was their third down guy, and I'm just excited about him. And like I said, those offers are notable. I mean, I know some schools throw out offers, but whenever you get, the Michigans, the Penn States, the Alabamas, the Oregons of the world, A&M, Tennessee, that obviously is evidence of, hey, this was a good land. And the kid's got a chip on his shoulder. You probably heard it. You were obviously there, Elliot. He talked after the game on Saturday. He's just a baller. So it'll be interesting to see how he continues to develop.
I watched the entire game. I had 2 other games that I was watching at the same time, so I'm splitting my 2 eyeballs into 3 directions. But where do I find this play from TJ Tampa?
Well, just go on the highlights. It's a 59-yard run. Okay. The 59-yard run by Jazz Patterson. If you go to just any of the highlights, that's like your biggest highlight for Iowa. And you just watch the guy who ran Jazz Patterson down. And there's a reason why he was wanted by scouts last year. And I'm guessing he's only elevating his stock this year. He's really good.
I'm here to take in the information and the insight from both of you. So that's what I do here. Now, other than that, the only thing we want to reserve time for is Corey's breakdown of the TV rating. He'll go on with that for about 20 minutes, right, Corey?
I simply said to you earlier today that Iowa State was 4th nationally. It was the tweet that was sent out there. Brett McMurphy or whoever it was. You didn't think it was all that impressive. I was simply saying, hey,
it wasn't impressive. It was just in the range where I expected that audience to be.
Did you really? Okay, because I'm just saying there were, like I said, there were teams like Michigan and A&M and these other big brands that Oregon that were below Iowa.
A&M wasn't. A&M was above.
Well, how about I pull it up?
A&M in Miami had a larger audience by about 600,000.
Okay, I can't pull it up because I'm actually on somehow I'm on StreamYard through my Twitter app, so I can't pull it up. Okay. Yeah, what, 4 million? Is that the number? Or
3.3 for Iowa State, right? 338. Okay. I think was the number of viewers. Yeah.
Well, and I don't know what the Iowa State contingency is like, but I'm just saying, you got a Michigan, for instance, that Michigan game. Who'd they play?
UNLV.
Okay. They played UNLV, right? But I'm simply saying, you always talk about how dominant the Ohio State and Michigan viewers are, and the data would agree with you. But I'm simply saying on Saturday, Iowa State doesn't have this massive contingency.
No.
Okay. And so, most of those people that watched were Iowa fans. Yes. There were obviously a considerable number of Iowa State fans. But the fact that Iowa still beat a Michigan UNLV game was that on Fox as well?
That was on CBS.
CBS. Okay, whatever. National Network. What's that?
They were playing at the same time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that, I don't know. I was impressed by those numbers. I don't know how those compare to past years in the rivalry. And of course, the game's not always on Fox. Sometimes it's on FS1 or Big Ten Network or whatever when it's in Kinnick.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, to chip in there, I mean, it's a more competitive game than Michigan UNLV, right? Like, I mean, I don't know what I would be doing if I was in a different state and I was just watching football on a Saturday and I saw Iowa State versus Michigan. Well, generally, when I'm just watching football, I try to find more competitive games than blowouts just because it's a better team. So, I haven't seen the numbers. I don't know how they compare to other broadcasts that are games that Iowa's played in, but that's just my thought process when it comes to what type of stuff I personally watch.
I select the biggest and best games, but then as the games progress, if it's 28-3 at halftime, then I'm searching for another game to fill up that screen. And I was watching Iowa State, Miami, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss and Tulane. I thought there was another game besides that. Maybe I had a game on my phone, so I might have been trying to track 4 games at the same time. I thought there was another game besides that was in my round of 3. So
Michigan UNLV, obviously.
No, it wasn't that one. Didn't watch that one.
UNLV at one time was a reputable program. Is that fair?
Yeah, if we're talking basketball.
You're telling me they haven't had good years in football?
No.
Okay. Well, I'm sure Utah State will destroy them later this season.
I would think so.
So.
And now I'm curious. So I'm looking up UNLV.
Yeah, look up their football history. They've got one of the worst winning percentages in the nation.
They haven't had a winning record since 2013, and it was 7-6. Before that, they didn't have a winning record. The last one was 2000.
I wonder why that.
They went 0-11 in 98, 1-11 in 96.
What's the reason for that, Mark? Is it? I mean, what doesn't a school in Las Vegas with that much rich basketball history? What don't they have that they can't get a coach and have enough NIL money? And do they not have the alumni base? What's the problem there? They got the market, right?
Yeah, they've got a market. They don't have recruiting unless, Arizona's becoming a much better high school football playing state. But
Cade
McNamara were bantied about as a Pac-12 possibility.
Cade McNamara is from Nevada.
Just because
I was just going to say that. Yeah. He's from Reno, isn't he?
He's from Reno.
Speaking of Cade, since he's played 2 games, is by the post-game rhetoric, but also just watching him play, do we believe that this injury is just kind of being maintained and it's fine and it's okay? Or is it improving? Or has there been any indication that it's given him issues?
What he said today is that he feels the best he's felt in a month. I think the offensive line has done a pretty good job of keeping him upright. If it was last year's offensive line, I think we might be talking about it a little more seriously. Not that we're not taking it seriously at this point, as the media, but I think it's gotten better, and I think a lot of that is because he's not on his back on a consistent basis, and you don't have to worry about. I mean, I think he was hit maybe once in the backfield against Iowa State. I don't know that he was. I don't know. I don't know exactly what was happening. It might not have been the backfield. He might have been trying to get away. Either way, there was only one time I think in these last 2 games where I went, ooh, and he just got up and jogged off. And I think there's going to be a general soreness, just like there is for anybody else after a football game. But by what he has said, which take it at face value if you want, by the sounds of it, it's getting better progressively. Not a drastic amount. It's not like they're loading him up with drugs in the locker room or anything. But at this point in time, I think it's just a progressive thing that's gradually getting better. Not that it's ever going to be, not that it'll get to 100% this season, but I think it's progressively getting better by what he's saying.
Well, not to go with a conspiracy here, but I'll throw a conspiracy out there again. Is it possible that Cade's? Because I heard the same thing you heard. I wasn't there like you were, but is it possible that the decision was made by the coaches to have Cade talk about how far he's come along? That way, the idea or the notion by the media and by the outside world that maybe Iowa should shut him down for this week didn't get thrown out there. Because that was a conversation that got brought up at the postgame show with Coach Patterson. And he's not there every day. I'm not there every day. How injured is he actually? I thought he looked pretty dinged up on Saturday. I thought they ran him a lot more out of the shotgun than they did against Utah State, which made me think, hey, they're trying to limit any type of movement and that bending that you have to do when you're under center. And I almost thought that today. I'm like, that seems odd that all of a sudden he's just happy-go-lucky. Maybe they're just trying to avoid that line of questioning. I don't know. That's maybe totally just conspiracy. But I mean, my feeling on the situation, if he is as healthy as he made himself out to be today, then fine, play him. I mean, build a lead in the first half, take him out at halftime, and giddy on up. But if he's not, then, I agree with Coach Patterson. There's no reason why Iowa shouldn't be able to go in that game with Joe Labus and still rout Western Michigan. Western Michigan is terrible. I mean, they are awful. They are absolutely awful. They went on the road at Syracuse and got their pants pulled down by 41. So, if we're talking the future and going into Penn State week, get Cade healthy. So now I don't think that's Kirk's mindset necessarily, but if they were going to do that, it would have made sense for them to come Monday. He's listed on the depth chart, and then come Tuesday, speak very cautiously about him, saying, well, he was really sore after Saturday, and we're gonna make it a game time decision. People don't have to know if he's practicing or not, but you wouldn't practice him if you're shutting him down. You're not going to practice him during the week, because somebody on the show on Sunday said, well, why don't they just make it a game time decision? Well, the problem with that is that means he practiced during the week. So you don't make him a game time decision. You shut him down. And my guess is that just isn't what Iowa wanted to do. And maybe he is as healthy as he says he is. I'm still nervous about that. But he says he's working out for game week for the first time in like a year. Isn't that what he said, Elliot?
Yep.
So that's good news, I guess. I hope it shows, because at some point he's going to have to move. He's going to have to run. I mean, go back to when Jake Rudock was here, or certainly CJ was more mobile, but I think Jake Rudock is probably the more feasible comparison. There were times where Jake had to get up and go. And so far we haven't seen Cade do that because, well, A, he hasn't really had to, but B, he can't, or he hasn't been able to. So I just want, if you're an Iowa fan, they're 3-0 heading into Penn State. They need every little edge they can get. And if he's hampered because you played him against Western Michigan, then I would say that's a problem.
Yeah, I think maybe they're trying to shut down the conversation regarding shutting him down too, because one thing that Cade did talk about today is that he feels like they're right there in terms of the offense and getting things to click. And because we talked about it in our post-game show with our Rivals podcast and said there's a lot of missed opportunities that they left out on the field in terms of scoring in both the Utah State and the Iowa State game. And if that part singularly is true, that they are right there, they believe they're right there, they just got to work on, those chemistry things. Maybe they want to shut down that conversation that Cade shouldn't play so they can justify him getting out there and them continuing to work on their chemistry. And if it is a concern, they can shut him down at halftime if they're happy with the chemistry that has been shown and they've run up the score. Does that track? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it does. Like I said, the only
as well. So
the only thing that like I said, the only issue with that is then you're still working him all week, as opposed to, hey, if you shut him down completely, perhaps he would heal completely by next week. But they know his situation better than we do. And I mean, let's be honest, Mark. Is it fair to say that a reasonable person looking at this game would say, hey, regardless of his injury, they should be able to shut down Cade McNamara at halftime, because this is not a good Western Michigan team. So they should be able to go into halftime with a 25, 30-point lead and be able to defend, that horrid Mac. I shouldn't say horrid Mac. That's actually a decent. Well, they didn't show it against Syracuse, but that's actually an offensive coordinator that knows what he's doing. But I think it's his first year there, and they should be able to just lock them down at that point. And hey, if you win, the problem is the problem here becomes as well. Elliot, have you talked about the Brian Ferentz contract thing and how big of a game this is for that?
We hit on it very briefly.
Yes.
But
isn't that the truth, Elliot? It is a big game.
You want to get out in front of that. Sure.
I mean, Elliot, if he doesn't, listen, if Iowa doesn't score 35 or more, I don't think he ain't making that 25-point per game thing. They need to put a 50-burger up on Western Michigan.
It needs to be 35 plus. Yeah, because if you're not getting it, well, I mean, chances are if you're not getting 25 points against Utah State, you're not going to get it even against the lowly Big Ten West. I say that, but you also consider the defenses that are in the Big Ten West. I mean, Illinois, Wisconsin, that's just off the top of my head. Those are talented defenses, especially after what we saw last year in that Illinois game with the 9-6 finish. I mean, you absolutely have to. And for them to repeatedly say we're not even thinking about the contract, that's just not. I mean, you can say that all you want, but by saying you're not thinking about it, that makes me think you're thinking about it. And again, it's prompted by the media and our questions, but you can't say it's completely absent of your mind. That's just a lie. I don't think they're actively trying to lie to us on purpose. Well, maybe they are, but it's in their mind, and I think they're trying to skirt past it when the media tries to bring it up. Go ahead.
Can I just say I'm never going to bring up a specific media member, but I thought it was funny that a particular media member today, and it was not Elliot, a particular media member today asked Cade basically what are his thoughts now that he's gotten to work with Brian for a couple of weeks. And I just laughed because I'm like, what do you think he's going to say? Yeah, he sucks. We hate him. He doesn't know how to throw a football. I mean, of course he's not. I just thought, well, that's a softball if I ever saw one or heard one.
It's still a good question just to see what he will say, just to see if there's a thread of something there.
Oh my goodness, Mark! I could have answered. I could have predicted almost word for word what Cade was going to say.
I understand that. I'm just saying there's a chance that there could be a thread of something in there that you could think, okay, well, he's playing his hand a little bit. He's showing his hand a little bit.
Was there a thread there, Elliot? Did you take anything away from Cade's response to that question?
No, I didn't.
I didn't either.
I kind of tuned out what he was saying. So to
He
be frank,
we all believe in Brian. Everybody loves Brian. I love Brian. It's whatever.
Well, they're
I'm
down
sure he
6
does love him.
all
points.
time. What, Mark?
They are down 6 points in their quest for the 25 points per game, and they did this to themselves.
Wait a minute. Hold on. They're not down 6 points. What are you talking about?
They're down 6 points. They scored 20 and they scored 24. They scored 1 less than 25 the first game, and they scored 5 less in game 2. They're down 6 points.
No. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. As a total, yes, they're down 6 points.
6 points. They've got
on average. They're down 3. Correct.
Yes, they've got to make up 6 points on the season.
Yeah.
And but your approach to the Cade McNamara health situation makes total sense, because the pros far outweigh the cons. If you're that much better than your opponent, you get valuable reps for your backup if you will need him at some point in the season. And you keep Cade McNamara out of harm's way, and he's going to be healthy for Penn State.
Yeah, and that Penn State game, I mean, obviously it's not a West game, but I think most people would agree it's the hardest game in the schedule. And if Penn State takes care of business this week, they play Illinois, then they're probably, I mean, again, not that I know you and I don't have a whole lot of respect for these.
I'm still trying to find out who I don't have respect for.
I was going to say, I was like, oh, I want to hear this. Well,
on deck, and if they hit 25 against Penn State, then we've turned some corner, or Iowa's defense had a heck of a day on Drew Aller.
Yeah. I would think that you guys would be extra intrigued in this Penn State-Illinois game, both being future opponents.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what time the game is off the top of my head, but I'll be keeping on it, and I'm sure I'll watch it on Sunday if I'm not able to get a glimpse of it on Saturday.
I'm actually intrigued. I'm also intrigued by Iowa State. You know who they play this weekend, Mark?
Off the top of my head, I don't.
They're at Ohio.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of an interesting game. I don't know what Ohio is supposed to be this year, but that's a good MAC program.
Did you guys happen to see, I saw this from Cyclone Fanatic, their Twitter account, that Matt Campbell said, and I quote, that Ohio starting quarterback is the toughest quarterback that they've faced so far this season.
O'Rourke is his name. I can't think of his first name.
Oh, wait a minute. Is it
K?
Kelly O'Rourke?
Isn't there an O'Rourke running for president?
I don't know. I've not come across that name.
There was. I can't see her facial expression, but I imagine that was sarcastic, Corey.
No,
no. Okay. Beto.
I don't follow politics, but I was thinking there was.
Beto ran in 2016 and 2020.
Oh, Beto. Wow, that was a long time ago. Yeah. Okay, there you go.
There's also an O'Rourke that Iowa is recruiting out of Lincoln Way East High School that Josh Shanowski is out of. So he's a 2025 pass rusher.
There you go.
Curtis Rourke is the Ohio quarterback.
Okay. Is it spelled with a K?
It is spelled with a K. Curtis Rourke is better than Cade McNamara, according to Matt Campbell.
And Theo Day.
Yes.
Wait. Matt said that today. Who said that?
Matt Campbell. He said toughest.
Oh, toughest.
So you can take that, whether it's the toughest for the defense or like physically tough. It was out of context, so I imagine.
Really, I'm gonna have to watch. I'm gonna have to listen back to that. But Matt Campbell, he's brave to even be showing his face after that disgraceful clock management on Saturday. What a disgrace in the final 10 minutes of that game, Mark. The Boo Birds were out. I was laughing, man. I was in the stands laughing because it was so ridiculous that they were running the play clock down to, they're down 2 scores and they're like 6 minutes, 7 minutes left and they're running the play clock down to 1 every time. I'm like, this is insane. I could not believe. I have more faith in Iowa State coaches than that, but that was bad.
That's bad.
Question for you guys. Did either of you see the video that I tweeted out of Phil Parker and Brian Ferentz running off the field after the game?
No, what? I'm going to have to look at it when I'm done here.
No, I'll just, they're running off, giving high fives to fans, and a couple of them are a little too high for them to reach on the ground. So Brian takes these just little baby hops and gives them high fives. Somebody photoshopped him dunking on Tom Haycock from the video that I got and responded to the video. It was hilarious. So you're gonna have to take a look. It went like semi-viral because of these adorable little hops that Brian gave to give the fans high fives.
I think we were shooting for a 31-point effort on Saturday. Mike Rotundo is asking, when was the last time Iowa scored more than 31 points?
Jeez.
That's a great question.
Well, they scored 50-something against Maryland 2 years ago.
Yeah, but
I'd say it wasn't last season. I don't think.
Wow, they didn't
score 27 against Nevada last year.
Oh my. I don't shake my head this much during the Nebraska show because they're just bad. They're just lousy.
Iowa also scored 27 against Rutgers last season.
Yes. 2 defensive touchdowns in that game.
Cooper DeJean, baby. The pride of Ida Grove, Iowa, my hometown. Actually, he's from Odebo. But did I tell you guys that on the last show? That I went to the same high school as Cooper?
I don't believe so. No.
Have I told you that, Corey?
You went to the same high school as who?
Cooper DeJean.
OABCIG?
You got it. Yep.
So how far ahead? I mean, you've been out of high school for how long?
Well, I graduated in 2015 and he graduated in 2020. So I
okay, so you probably never even knew his family?
No. Well, actually, his dad was my middle school basketball coach in 8th grade. So I was aware that Cooper existed, but I didn't know that he was going to be that type of athlete when he got to high school. But yeah, funny thing is, do you guys remember the wide receiver for Iowa State, Trevor Ryan, by chance?
I remember that name. I don't remember.
He scored when they upset Oklahoma at Oklahoma. He was number 19, super fast, return punts for him too. He was also from my high school, believe it or not. 2 FBS football players from OABCIG. And Trevor had a ton of track records when we were in high school. I'm still the 400-meter record holder at OABCIG, just for the record.
Oh, man, you can move. Nice.
But Trevor had all these records, and we're like, these aren't going to be broken for 100 years. And then Cooper comes in 4 years later and just obliterates them. And the 4x1 and 4x2 records and all that too. So yeah, just kind of crazy that all happened within a span of like 7 years, 6-7 years.
Just for the record, Cooper was from Odebolt, right? And you were Ida Grove.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Trevor was from Ida Grove too. So
I was going to say Ida Grove is a lot bigger than Odebolt, correct?
I think it's like twice the size. Yeah, which isn't saying much because for frame of reference, I graduated with 80 people.
We need to get Mark enough super chats so he can visit Odebolt. How many people are in Odebolt?
I don't even. Fun fact about Odebolt: it used to be the popcorn capital of the world. It's not anymore.
Well, that is a very fun fact.
Yeah. Ida Grove is known as Castletown, USA. I got all these.
Usually, you become the capital of the world in something is because it was originated there. Is that where it was first created, invented?
Popcorn? I have no idea. Huh. They used to. They had like these shipping like. Oh gosh, sheds, I guess, these big long sheds that are still there, and people of Odebolt don't want to tear them down, and they're just old and trashy, and people of Odebolt don't want to tear them down because it's part of the city's history. Sounds like something else in our recent U.S. history, but I'll just leave it at that.
Corey, it may be a surprise to you, but if I ever visit Iowa, I'm coming to a game. That would be most likely my reasoning.
And it wouldn't be Iowa City. It'd be Iowa City, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. I will say though, I
shouldn't say absolutely. If Ames gives me reason to come, then
doesn't Texas come to Ames this year?
Yes, I believe.
So that's going to be a game. But I will say this, comparative to game 1 against Utah State, that I was at both games, of course, not in the cozy air-conditioned press box like Elliott, but as far as the heat is concerned and just the game experience, that game against Iowa State was a lot more entertaining, a lot more fun. Crowd was a lot more engaged until it got to be 17-0, and then the crowd was completely silent. But early on, that first quarter, it was rocking in there. So Jack Trice can be loud if people are engaged, and especially when you have the Cyhawk game, changes that.
There was a lot more. Honestly, I thought I'd see black shirts like throughout the stadium, but it was a sea of red. I mean, I'm not saying Iowa didn't show up, Iowa fans didn't show up, but it was a sea of red in Jack Trice too.
There's a lot of Iowa fans tailgating. I think a lot of those fans, they said like 10,000 fans of the two teams combined tailgated but did not go into the game. So I think there were a lot of Iowa fans that just tailgated with people.
Must have been.
All right. Is there anything else we need to hit on concerning Iowa football with a big Western Michigan game straight ahead?
Well, first of all, did you get Elliott's breakdown of Nick Brooks' commitment?
I did not.
We probably should do that. I mean, 4-star tackle, 6'8", 300. Is he actually 375? I mean, 247 got him at 375. I can't believe that.
385.
385.
Verified from his head coach.
Oh my goodness.
Yep,
okay.
He is a big boy. 6'8", 385. First of all, before I even talk about football, Nick has. Well, first of all, he has 17 siblings. At one point, he lived in Georgia for 2 years to develop football-wise. He's been all over. Currently lives with a different family member. He's just a lot. A lot has happened in his life, and this was probably the coolest moment in my job so far, just to see it come to fruition and to be there when he announced. And he reached out to me about getting a graphic together and stuff like that. And just to have a relationship with a recruit like that to this point in my job is just really cool. And to be able to be there and shake his hand and shake his dad's hand and obviously do the media stuff as well and have a story ready and all that. But it was just a really cool story. And Nick's a really good kid too. He's a monster on the football field. Yeah, I'll have a story about him. One time I went to watch him practice, and because he's got this background and what he's done with his football career, they kind of let him warm up and do some stuff with the O-line coach because he's not going to do any defensive stuff when they're doing defensive stuff. Though he did play a little bit of defense 2 weeks ago in the Pleasant Valley game, which surprised me. But he wanted to be out there. So that's an indication as to who Nick is. But when I was at this practice, I'm filming and taking photos, and I'm filming, and the O-line coach points to me and says, okay, after you hit me, run at him. I'm getting video, and all of a sudden this monster starts running at me, and I knew he wasn't going to hit me, but there was a moment of fear. Just this big guy running at me. But this is a huge addition. Obviously, you got Joey Van Wetsinga, who's now a 3-star on Rivals to start the 2025 class. He's a 5.6 rating, so a middle of the road 3-star who could play offense or defense on the interior for Iowa. He played D tackle, or they're looking at him for the center position too. So kind of a Logan Jones kind of prospect, but that was a good start. Joey Van Wetsinga, little brother of Rusty Van Wetsinga, who's a walk-on at Iowa this year and is Hayden Large's backup at fullback. He'll probably see time sooner rather than later at that fullback spot. But so a good start there with Joey out of Pleasant Valley in Bettendorf, Iowa, Quad Cities area. But Nick is a national recruit that got national attention before he committed. This isn't a Cody Fox thing where they offered Cody, Notre Dame tried to get in there, and Cody said, no, I'm sticking with Iowa. Alabama came forward with an offer. Georgia came forward with an offer. Texas came forward with an offer. Florida State did. LSU did. The list goes. I mean, Iowa State did, if you count them. Michigan. I mean, these programs that are in the state and powerhouse programs nationally wanted Nick Brooks, 5.8, 4-star, and top 150 recruit in the country. This dude was heavily recruited. He's been to campuses. He's been recruited by other places. And he may very well take official visits this year. The way he's described it to me is, you only get this opportunity one time. And fair enough. I mean, you're getting these schools to pay for you to travel and see them. And I think that's fair. But he feels cared for, and he feels like, I mean, he said that Iowa is tight end U and offensive line U because of what they've been able to churn out and send to the NFL. He is a great get. There you can see FutureCast. I put that in May of this year after I talked to him the first time. So we were in the know for a little while. He's a number 1 recruit in the 2025 class in Iowa, just ahead of Thomas Meyer out of Clear Lake, and who may very well end up being a Hawkeye as well. But Brooks is a great ad from a football standpoint, from a culture standpoint. And one thing that Coach Brian White from Kennedy said to me is he doesn't think there's a better fit for Nick. He thinks it's perfect. It's right down the road from family. It's a place where he can be connected, but he can still grow. There's plenty of structure, obviously. And when you talk about high-level recruits like this, at the high school level, they may very well be just that good because of the athleticism and the genetics that they have. Nick has the athleticism and the genetics. He pulls like he's 250 pounds. I'll tell you that. And at the same time, he wants to be great. He wants to continue to work. He wants to play in the NFL. He wants to play left tackle at Iowa. He said playing at Iowa is a dream come true for him. And with the work ethic, he's set the Kennedy school record in squat. He squats over 500 pounds. I mean, like, the list goes on and on. And one thing that I heard him saying when he was working at a practice, it was hot. You could tell he was hot. And he goes, it's about sacrifice. It's about sacrifice. He's walking around giving other teammates high fives and stuff like that. And he appears to be a pretty quiet, soft-spoken kid, but he loves football and he wants to be great. And the Iowa staff cares for him in a way that makes him feel at home. And it also provides the opportunity for him to reach the NFL and to be the best he can be. He said he's been told he could be the next Tristan Wirfs, and that's a great comparison. He kicks steps well. He's 6'8", 385, right? Kennedy's starting quarterback is 5'10". So they're not passing the ball to the left side of the field. The other thing about Nick, too, is that he doesn't just play left tackle. He rotates on the offensive line between left tackle, left guard, and right guard. So he's got that versatility. He's working on a bunch of different things. Comes out of the same high school as Connor Colby. Has connections to the program in Max White as well as a walk-on running back. I think, it's a great fit for a ton of different reasons for Nick. And he's not Caden Proctor. I'll say that. He is not Caden Proctor. And I don't say that to put Caden in a negative light. I say that because the comparisons by adults is not fair. He's his own person. He's doing his own thing. He's committed to Iowa.
But until he signs on that dotted line next year, fans here he's taking official recruits out. That's going to become a narrative on social media. That's exactly what
it will, and it's already a narrative.
Okay. I don't know Nick personally. I'm obviously not recruiting like you, but based on everything I've heard and information out there, I agree with you. It sounds like the dynamic with his family is a lot different than with Cade.
Yeah, Yeah. And yeah, I'll tell you this. Nick has told me that he feels it in his heart, and I wrote about that, that he wants to be a Hawkeye and that he sees a path to playing time quickly, and this is something that he wants to do, that he wants to be, and I take Nick for his word. You know, things can change. For right now, I want to leave it at what I've said, but I have no reason to believe that he up and leaves the program on signing day, other than a history of other players doing it. I haven't seen or heard anything regarding Nick that would indicate he would do that, in my opinion.
Hawkeyes Live right here at the Voice of College Football each and every Tuesday. It's at 5:30 Eastern, 4:30 where it counts. Elliot Clough, we appreciate Elliot being here. Catch his work on Rivals. Just gave you a great outline on Nick Brooks. And within all of that, you could tell the storytelling involved and also the nuance of the writing. And so please check out Elliot's work there on Rivals. Corey, safe travels for you.
Thank you, sir.
And certainly check out Corey, of course, at the Hawkeye, from the Hawkeye of the Storm, and Corey's latest over there. 5 hours of post game if you need to catch up on anything Cyhawk. And of course, looking forward to the Western Michigan game and the Hawkeyes getting ready for Big Ten play. Corey, thank you so much. Again, safe travels. We will talk to you soon. Elliot, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you as well. Folks, many of you are here just here in the last few minutes. So we've got the largest crowd we've had for the full 60 minutes. So you know what you do. You wait for the video to post, which should be automatic. You can watch what you missed. And we will see you all back here next Tuesday. Join Corey after the game on Saturday.